Our series, Wealthy Wednesdays, is headed by Dr. Todd Yeary. We're going to catch up today on current issues confronting the community and our nations, including the DOJ dropping civil rights litigation cases and enforcement cases around the country, including the gutting of the Voting Rights Division of the Department of Justice and the Trump administration's use of civil rights laws against economic racism, social racism, systemic racism, by now allowing white plaintiffs and jurisdictions to claim reverse discrimination. You're not going to want to miss our show today. Todd Yeary is principal of the Yeary Firm, a Maryland-based litigation and government relations firm, and also serves as senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church of Baltimore and affiliates. Dr. Yeary is also former chief executive officer of the Rainbow Push Coalition, the international human and civil rights organization founded by my father. Dr. Yeary's social justice work includes having served on the national board of the National Action Network, past political action chair for the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP, as co-founding principal of the Community Churches of Community Development, and as founding principal of SALT, Strategic Advocacy and Legislative Think Tank, a faith-based public policy collaborative that works on regional and national empowerment strategies impacting disaffected communities. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Always good to be with you, my brother. Good to be. Look, you keep reading that bio, I'm going to start believing some of that stuff. So I'm just glad to be able to hang out. How you doing?
You know, I don't think I've met anyone with more alphabets in front of their name, behind their name, through their name, and bring the breadth of experience that you bring, not only from the legislative, the judicial, the moral, but also what's happening politically. Dr. Yeary, I'm so glad that you're part of this program. And Wealthy Wednesdays, The Politics of Our Faith, is a series that we plan to inaugurate in June, but we're working through some of the technological kinks and scheduling kinks to make it possible, because everyone in this country needs to hear your mind, and they can count on that on Wednesdays right here on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Dr. Yeary, how are things going?
Well, they were going, I guess, okay for the conversation we had earlier, but now that we find out that the officers in Memphis who are responsible for the death of Tyree Nichols have been acquitted. And acquitted on state charges, which now means that if they're going to be civil rights charges that would be brought forward by this Justice Department, there are a lot of concerns whether or not there will ever be any accountability for a death that was caused by actions that we saw on camera in real time. And so it's a troubling day, even as we're talking about other civil rights actions by this administration. We also have ongoing concerns that are lingering, and I'm not sure that I have confidence in this administration. As a matter of fact, I'm certain I don't have confidence in this administration to hold up civil rights law as it was intended at the time of its passage.
So there you have it, right here. Breaking news on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The officers who are responsible for the death of Tyree Nichols have been acquitted from state charges within the last hour or so, I believe. And the question now is whether or not the federal government under Donald Trump and Pam Bondi will bring federal charges based upon the civil rights statutes. All indications are that they probably will not, and therefore no one may be held accountable for the death of Tyree Nichols on the basis of civil rights charges that we have long fought for at the federal level. The consequences are very extraordinary. We're going to deal with that, the gutting of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, the gutting of the Justice Department's Voting Rights Division, and I'm deeply moved by what Dr. Yeary is bringing to the table on Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we're going to pick back up on this conversation.
It's Afternoon Drive Time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You got to live in the reality, because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial, because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle, and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is, we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
You really about to do it?
40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music.
You really about to do it?
Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Thy ticket, Lady Jennifer of Coolidge.
Well, many thanks, good sir. Heareth my Discover card.
They accept Discover at Renaissance fairs?
Yeah, they do here. Discover is accepted at the places I love to shop. Getteth with the times.
With the times, you're playing the lute.
Yeah, and it sounds pretty good, right?
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Reverend Todd Geary, both minister, lawyer, 1 foot in the pulpit and one foot in the courtroom. The AP story reads, 3 former Memphis officers were acquitted Wednesday of state charges, including second-degree murder in the fatal beating of Tyree Nichols after he ran away from a traffic stop. A death that sparked nationwide protests and prompted renewed calls for police reforms in the United States. A jury, which appeared to be all white, took about 8.5 hours over 2 days to find Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith not guilty on all charges after a 9-day trial in state court in Memphis. After the jury's verdict was read, the defendants hugged their lawyers as relatives of the former officers cried. One relative yelled, "Thank you, Jesus." The 3 defendants still face perspective of years in prison after they were convicted of federal charges last year, though they were acquitted of the most serious charges then as well. You know, before I read any more of this story, let me remind our listeners that these were the 4 African-American police officers in Memphis who pulled up to a stoplight behind an African-American who apparently might have been in a relationship with one of the officers, some such combination. And they chased him down. And then the nation and the world watched the video recorded live beating of Tyree Nichols to death on that occasion. It really wasn't black versus white. It was black versus black, but really blue versus black. And it became very clear also that these members of the same fraternity, my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, were also part of Greek fraternal organizations. And some of our basic cardinal principles in the frat are uplift, right? Looking out for our brother, respect. And many of those cardinal principles, Reverend Uri, obviously did not matter on that occasion because what looked like not just a civil rights violation, but something very, very personal. And the beating itself was so extraordinary that it shocked the conscience not only of the nation, but of the world. Their acquittal, and whether or not Donald Trump will even press forward on the federal aspects of this case, have to be overwhelming and devastating to our community at this hour.
They not only are devastating when we look at the trajectory of this case. Some of the federal charges went forward first. Some of the officers pled guilty to state and federal charges. And so it feels as if a bit of this is kind of the negotiation that happens around jury trials when the awareness of the members of the jury about other associated matters that may have been resolved pre-trial impact the deliberations, regardless of what the evidence is.
Mm.
Too often, when we're dealing with trials where the charges, on one hand, seem to be pretty obvious, but when it comes to you and me, they little more suspect, right? But because you have prosecutorial discretion and you have the great potential of jury nullification in a number of these instances, the outcomes are far less than certain. It is troubling for a number of reasons. As you set up our conversation this afternoon, when we are concerned about whether or not there's going to be a commitment from this administration and its Justice Department to enforce existing civil rights law, we now have to feel quite concerned about what might happen with our very bodies. We've seen this before going way back. There's police misconduct, there's quasi police misconduct, as we saw in the death of Trayvon Martin. We see and hear these narratives time and time again. And you also have the president's most recent executive order from last week, where he declared that he is going to, quote, unleash law enforcement on the communities to take care of issues of violence in our communities. I'm not sure what you unleash dogs.
Mm.
You don't unleash law enforcement who are supposed to protect and defend. And so there are a number of questions that remain. There are a number of serious concerns that have been raised. And we have to remain vigilant as a community across the country that the dynamics are shifting and the rules of, as we've talked about and laughed about in a not so funny way, the games of monopoly have changed. But the rules of white privilege have not, and we've got to keep that foremost in our minds.
You know, one of the issues that is on my mind at this moment is that two of the officers pled guilty in the federal case. They obviously played some role in the state case. The jury has, if you will, exonerated the three police officers in the state case. Is it possible that Donald Trump can take that state exoneration process and then go back to their plea deals and say, listen, these men were not afforded the proper process of a jury, and had they had a state jury looking at their case, they themselves may not have pled guilty under the circumstances that they pled guilty, hence creating that federalism problem between a decision made by a trier of fact at the state level, ignoring the federal prosecutors who Trump could easily claim were on some kind of witch hunt. And then they made them plead guilty to their crimes. Work with me, Reverend Attorney Yeary. Am I making sense of how they play between the two jurisdictions?
My brother, you are well informed, and you obviously have experience in this. Let's talk about the politics.
Personal
of the
experience, my
dynamic.
brother. Personal experience. I've been in prison.
Listen. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. I ain't talking about nobody. But if we want to go there, we can go there and have that conversation too. Let's talk about the power of the state, capital S, whether it is the sovereign that is the federal government or the sovereign that is the state government. There is prosecutorial immunity, which is absolute. There's judicial immunity that is absolute. And now there is presidential immunity, which is about as close as absolute as you're going to get, short of the Supreme Court saying it's absolute. So let's talk about it. The president doesn't have to give any explanation for issuing a pardon, as you well know.
Absolutely.
And so the justification is whatever comes upon him as a whim. So the federal charges, which is where the president has absolute pardon power, can go away. But let's also remember that there's another executive, the executive in the state house in Tennessee. The governor of Tennessee has pardon power on state charges. Whether or not that requires some input from a pardon or parole board, I haven't looked at Tennessee state law to see what's required there, but the governor has a role. So let's say that the federal charges, pleas or otherwise, There's not going to be a prosecution on federal charges. The federal plea that has gone in is nullified by a pardon. And then you have an examination of the state process where there was a plea to the state charges as well for a couple of the officers. Does that lead to a state pardon? That is the very real reality, that when you have a jury that, interestingly enough, appears all white. I'm not sure what that means, right? Where there's some very fair-skinned white people that we couldn't figure out who was passing and who was not. Does that inform what this is? Or is it a throwback to the origins of policing in this country that was actually grounded in two primary concerns? One was the protection of white property interests, and the second was enforcement of the fugitive slave law. That's the origin of policing in these United States. And so when we see that there is deportation of citizen and non-citizen alike, even to countries that have nothing to do with the experience, Libya is now possibly a partner for the deportation of a number of folks, whether they've committed crimes or not. And oh, by the way, violations of immigration law are not criminal code violations, they're civil code violations. To now have basically the reinstitution, and I've thought about this over the days since we've talked, is we are seeing the reinstitution of 21st century slavery, where you are transporting and trafficking the bodies of persons to countries that have no ties and no obligations, holding against the will and against due process persons for unknown and unforeseeable terms, that says your freedom is tenuous at best in these United States.
Mm, mm. Let me paint a picture that comes to mind as we have this discussion from the movie Harlem Nights. Eddie Murphy and Red Fox and Richard Pryor concocted some kind of scheme to steal from Mr. Calhoun his money. And there's this scene where they're both wearing black police uniforms. They're both blue. And they're trying, I guess, to steal either his numbers or his drugs or whatever from the back of one of Bugsy's or Mr. Calhoun's cars, and two white cops show up. And the white cops are confronted by the driver of the car, who says, hey, this is Mr. Calhoun's. This is his stuff. I mean, these Negro cops over here are in my way. And then the white cops have a conversation with the black cops. You're supposed to be policing on your side of town, and you're not supposed to be policing on our side of town. And they said, no, this is about the law. This is about, there's a crime that has been committed here. Now, I raised that parallel to say Donald Trump is in a position with the pardon power in this particular case to be able to pardon those who were convicted under their plea agreement for the offense that their other brothers in the blue were acquitted of in the state case. He gets to say, you see how unfair the law can be? I'm going to make it even. And basically, I don't have a problem with four guys on this side of town beating the hell out of black people. But had they been white police officers who had beaten Tyree Nichols, I can't imagine the kind of summer that the American people would be having right now hearing this acquittal. Your thoughts, Dr. Urey?
Let's take it a little further. In the self-interest of this president, who is obviously positioning himself for some consideration in 2028, regardless of what the Constitution now says, is now making an appeal. I can be fair to black people too. These are black officers who were charged with the beating death of a black person who supposedly ran from a traffic stop. They found no weapon. There was no commission of a crime in the presence of the officers other than supposedly fleeing this traffic stop. And what we saw from a poll camera that captured the incident, otherwise we would have never known, is now swept under the rug with the cover of an acquittal, which the basis of an acquittal, for folks who don't understand how the law works, when you're charged with a crime, the prosecutor must prove each and every element of each and every offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt. So that typically means you have a criminal act and a criminal mind, and you have the circumstances that kind of shape what the crime is or what the alleged crime is. And so the question for me on a second degree murder charge, which does not require premeditation, how does this jury, based on what we have seen, reach an acquittal on second degree murder? And was there a lesser included charge for which there was also an acquittal? Some of that would be certain degrees of assault, right, tied to intentionality. And so the fact that we have an acquittal, and it sounds like it's an acquittal for everything, what was charged and what might have been lesser included, was there other evidence presented at trial that has not reached the public awareness that informs this conversation? Net, the concern is still real. This is not just about Black officers in blue uniforms. It is about Black people who are fearing for their very lives. Remember, let me just call her name, Sandra Bland, in a traffic stop, right? Let's remember how many other folks have experienced hostility. I've got a number of cases in federal courts across the country right now where persons who were met with unjustified force and excessive force at that find themselves having to defend their cause over and against the other kind of immunity that is often claimed by police officers, and that's qualified immunity. And so when we think about this, we've got to get back to educating. We got to have an updated talk. Remember the talk that everybody has with their sons and daughters about how to engage with the police. We got to update the talk. The subject matter might be the same, but the contents have changed. And so we've got to be aware. How do we help our folks get out of harm's way in real time so that we can live to come back to fight another occasion? Because if the new acquittals of presumptively all white juries in 2025, not 1955, right? Not in terms of Emmett Till. This ain't Mississippi. It's close to it, though. It's right across the river, right? But when you have Memphis as basically North Mississippi in its sights, with a Black chief of police, Black woman, who came into that role right after the incident from Durham, North Carolina, we've got to be aware of how we are getting hustled in this process to reinforce white supremacist outcomes with the cover of the President of the United States.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, The Politics of Our Faith, with Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary, our special guest on every Wednesday. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, Dr. Yeary.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a Black man, Patrick Lyoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. One person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyree Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And a Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580 and the California Black Chamber of Commerce invite you to the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. Get certified and register as a new bidder. Sell products and services to the state. Learn about pre-bid events and more, and it's all free. All you have to do is sign up at www.calbcc.org. That's www.calbcc.org. Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580.
Is this the tiger?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Golden State Warriors will have to play at least a week in the NBA playoffs without Steph Curry. An MRI exam Wednesday morning revealed that Curry suffered a grade 1 strained hamstring Tuesday night in Game 1 at Minnesota. Curry is expected to miss the next 3 games in Golden State's second-round series with Minnesota. Game 2 is Thursday night in Minneapolis. Veteran women's college basketball coach Cedric Baker is the new coach at HBCU South Carolina State. In 22 years at HBCU Savannah State, Baker won 262 games and tournament championships in the MEAC and SIAC. Baker is facing a tough challenge at South Carolina State. The women's basketball program there has not had a winning season in 10 years. Tim Eatman, the previous coach at South Carolina State, was 7-84 in 3 seasons. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the story of the one. As a safety manager at a manufacturing plant, he does everything he can to keep his coworkers safe. From finding ways to reduce risks to keeping safety supplies in stock. And for that, he relies on Grainger. Grainger offers a broad range of quality products and next-day delivery, so he can always play it safe. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is Joe Cordell of Cordell & Cordell. Cordell & Cordell is the largest family law firm in the country, with over 35 years of helping clients navigate divorce. That does give us certain advantages, for example, in focus and resources. But being big doesn't mean less personal or less local. Our attorneys live and work in your community, and as neighbors, they understand the challenges your families face. If you're a guy facing divorce, remember, Cordell & Cordell, a partner you can count on.
1455 Frazee, San Diego. CordellCordell.com.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Tomorrow, May 8th, my very special guest will be Congressman Bobby Scott, representing the great state of Virginia. We'll get the lay of the land on what's taking place in the Congress of the United States from one of this Congress's longest serving African-American leaders. Congressman Scott is an extraordinary leader with an extraordinary mind, particularly on criminal justice issues. And we're going to be following up on some of these issues that we're talking about today with him tomorrow as well. Dr. Yuri, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I'm glad to know, my brother, that you don't discriminate. You let good alphas come on your show as well. I just figured I just figured I'd throw that out there. You know, but we close like that. We have that kind of bond.
Reverend, we're so close. I'm gonna put one more case on you. This past Monday in Ohio, a father who fatally struck a deputy with his car after his own son was shot by the police was denied bond during a chaotic hearing on Tuesday. A judge ordered Rodney L. Hinton to be remanded with no bond in connection with the death of Hamilton County Police Special Deputy Larry Henderson. Hinton, who is charged with aggravated murder, pleaded not guilty. Now, this is one of those cases where the body cam caught a white police officer shoot and kill a young African-American man who apparently was armed, but not pointing the weapon at the police officer, trying to escape. A call had come into the police station alleging some aggravated act that included a weapon, and he was the person who jumped out of the garbage cans or near the garbage cans with the weapon, and the police were pursuing him. That was white versus black. But now we have black versus black, or if you will, in both cases, the similarity is blue versus suspect, or blue versus someone being denied due process, or blue versus someone who has a right to remain silent, has a right to make their case before a jury, has a right to plead guilty or not guilty, being denied the very processes before they can open their mouths. And we are talking on this show today with Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri. Attorney Yuri has 1 foot in the pulpit, 1 foot in the courtroom. We're talking about the politics of how Donald Trump can wrap his mind around the blue. Stand for the black police officers in Memphis, Tennessee, saying they have a right, possibly pardon the 2 that pled guilty in the federal case, while at the same time saying that this young man with a gun did not have the right to due process. And we add the immigration issue and the absence of due process in that area as well. We just have a conundrum of legal problems and constitutional interpretations. Dr. Yuri, help us sort through this for us.
All right.
It'll be
I'm
hot
gonna take
summer.
a deep breath.
It'll be a hot summer.
Yeah. And summer's not official until next month, right? We haven't made it to Memorial Day yet. Let me kind of frame this in the context of how you set it up. You're an historian. Dr. King is assassinated in 1968. Lyndon Johnson, concerned about civil unrest in urban settings because there had been this movement of passage of national law, Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, Medicare and Medicaid come out of that Great Society plan. Fair housing is signed into law the week after Dr. King's assassination. In the midst of all of this, there was still concern. Why was the president not getting more acknowledgement for this progress that had been made in terms of federal law? And what they found was actually captured in a public document of the federal government, not subject to being swept off of the bookshelves because we don't like what it's talking about. It's a public document called the Kerner Report. Otto Kerner, as you well know, former Illinois governor, chaired that commission along with a number of others. The last surviving member of the Kerner Commission just passed away a few months ago. the United States Senator from Oklahoma, who I had an opportunity to spend some time with just as I was going into law school, to ask him about his work on the Kerner Commission. The Kerner Commission has a couple of sayings that are particularly profound. We are moving quickly toward two nations, one black, one white, separate and unequal. And the other being, why do we see such dis-ease happening across the country? The culprit from a federal commission was called out. We don't have to make it up. We don't have to point to it. We don't have to pretend that it's a figment of our imagination. It was white racism. Public document commissioned by the president, who was passing all of this progressive legislation at a time where you had Vietnam raging out of control. And then, of course, leading up to the 1968 election, he decides he's not going to run for re-election. Let's talk about this because this is important. What we see happening is there's a perception of certain mindsets. The notion that you are innocent until proven guilty as a legal principle, and for those who don't know, probably from a third to 40% of my practice is criminal defense work. I spend a lot of time in trials. When the power of the state to lean in and assign a narrative to you is so profound as to inhibit your freedom, you're only charged. There's an allegation. Liberty is taken right away for two reasons. The right to bail is based on two principles. Will you show up for court? And do you present a threat to public safety? The perception of Blackness as a threat to public safety is still real. And it is disparate in terms of how it's applied when we look at who gets released pending trial and who gets held pending trial. And so it's not shocking to me, it's still disappointing to me that a father responding to the chaos of the moment, trying to maybe even protect himself from what's going down, finds himself charged with a crime of intent. It says then that they have to prove, going back to how you get a conviction, you have to prove that a state of mind was present at the time the crime was committed. Otherwise, you cannot convict. And so we have to be mindful that when this president has the ability to appoint a number of judges, that federal judges, that part is changing. When he's reopening Alcatraz, I'm going to say it again, Alcatraz, they use it as a movie set. He wants to use federal money to reopen an island prison to house certain people, and it could be those who are charged or accused or convicted of federal crimes and or state crimes. When he's cutting deals with El Salvador and Libya, these are countries that have certain economic needs and interests that can be exploited. We've got to raise the question at the same time when the president has withdrawn the United States from the UN High Commission on Human Rights, that we've got issues to deal with. And so if we're not vigilant in this moment, don't sleep. They're coming at wokeism. Stay woke, because they coming and they not playing.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, I want to press this issue with Dr. Uri before he ends on his word of hope, which we all need at this hour. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, Reverend Dr. Todd Uri.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to
scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
The IRS finally caught up with Louie.
I hadn't paid my taxes in 8 years. I owe the IRS a lot of money.
Louie was in deep trouble.
We're going to take your house, put a lien on your bank account, garnish your pay. They don't care. They're going to take your paycheck.
Louie found out about Optima Tax Relief, the leading tax resolution firm. A-plus rated by the Better Business Bureau, they've resolved over $1 billion for their clients.
Optima Tax, they help me. They calm me down. They make me feel comfortable, and I trust them.
Louie has a lot to be thankful for.
I don't owe the IRS anymore, and I'm able to live a comfortable life, a lot better life. It was because of Optima Tax.
For tax help you can trust, call Optima now for a free consultation. Take it from Louie.
If you owe the IRS, don't go it alone. Give Optima Tax a call. They can help you.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Yeah. The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
It's me, Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash. I see those dry elbows, baby. But don't worry, get moisturized right in the shower. So hydrated you can skip the lotion after.
Don't wanna see it dry no more. Skin so moisturized with body wash.
Look at you now. No more dry skin. Your skin gets the moisture it craves with
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The leader of our Wednesday interfaith, interreligious reflection, the politics of our faith, is Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Man, you keep dragging me on the curb. I'm going to keep taking your class. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm just going to hand you my paper so I can turn it in with my name on it. That's what I want to do. That's just how bright Reverend Yeary, Dr. Yeary is. Doc, let me make a passionate plea for our listeners and to you as well before you close on your word of hope in our last 10-minute or so segment. I have a right to a lawyer. I have a right to a fair trial. I have a right to effective counsel. I have a right to a jury of my peers. I have a right to avoid cruel and unusual punishment. I have a right to defend myself. I have a right to an appeal if I am convicted. I have a right to forgiveness, to pardon after I've paid my debt to society. From George Floyd to Tyrese Nichols to Sandra Bland to Ryan Hinton, they never even made it to court. Black people are being denied due process. The same due process that Abrego Garcia is being denied in El Salvador. And ICE knocking on people's doors in our schools and in our churches. We are being denied due process. I just gave you a litany of rights that I'm entitled to after I'm arrested. I'm entitled to also have my rights read to me, including the right to remain silent because anything I say can and will be used against me in a court of law. None of these rights are afforded me or afforded Ryan Hinton or afforded Tyree Nichols or afforded George Floyd. It wasn't just the beating by the police, whether they are white or black or what color they're wearing or what color they are. I have rights under the Constitution that are not being afforded me. Yeah. I'd like your response to that, and then we'll let you take us on home.
Well, I feel the passion, and we know it's sincere. There are rights and there are responsibilities. Let me kind of put it in context. One of the biggest challenges that I confront whenever we are seating a jury is I don't see enough of those who are most impacted by the criminal legal system in the jury pool. We try to find reasons and excuses not to sit. We have stuff that's too important than possibly sit for 2 days, 3 days, depending on if it's a more serious matter, it might run a little longer. The system doesn't run efficiently. It's designed to run slow to wear you out. So one of the reasons we face some of the challenges to our rights is we often don't fulfill our responsibilities. So stop coming up with excuses about why you're not going to serve on jury duty. Jury duty is how you hold the system accountable.
And you got to register and vote to get on a jury.
Well, state is they can look at voter rolls or driver rolls. You may not be a registered voter. If you have a license in a state, you can show up on the jury pool. And remember, 97% or so of all actions legally at trial happen in state courts. The federal government, while it's the largest law firm, it doesn't have the largest docket. And so we have to remember that allows the federal government, as you well know, to be selective not only with who they prosecute, but how forcefully they prosecute. So when we start talking about the reality of it, you can't complain about a system that you won't hold to account. So those of us who are able need to show up, need to make sure we're there. That's number one. Number two, there are some things that we have to remember what to do and when to do it. If you find yourself encountering law enforcement and you're not sure what's going on, pray in your head, say to the officer, if I'm being detained, I want my attorney. You may not even know who your attorney is going to be yet, but you want one.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. You know Jesus by name. You may have to find your lawyer online or in the phone book or have a family member find you somebody, but you ain't talking until you have legal representation because the system is set up to get you to talk out or talk around your rights. Then when we think about how these rights are framed, it goes back to 3 words at the beginning of the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people. Now, I often raise this question when we talk about originalism in the law, when the Constitution was written. I'm always trying to figure out who the heck is we and who were the people. People have a legal definition. The reason you see Mr. Garcia going through what he's going through is that he's not recognized really as a person. And so the president can say, I don't know if everybody's entitled to due process. I'm not a lawyer. No, you're not a lawyer. You're a president. And under the constitutional article that gives you your powers, you have to take care that the laws are faithfully enforced and applied. And so there's got to be accountability. Some of it comes by way of elections. Some of it, most of it comes by what happens between elections. Are we showing up at school board meetings when they're trying to take books off the shelves? Are we showing up at city council meetings when they're passing local ordinances against our interests? Are we making sure that we have a pipeline of potential candidates to run for everything from dog catcher to senator, from delegate to president, to represent our interests and to recognize that there's a common theme here? When 1% of the population controls more wealth than the other 99%, we know what this hustle is. The hustle is still monopoly. And we've got to stop rolling the dice, hoping to pass go, skipping past Park Place and Boardwalk. You're going to hear it time and time again. Pass and go and collecting $200 without getting into the system and changing the dynamics does not alter the course of the game. You have a president who's been convicted 34 times and still lives in public housing. When you have folks who've been convicted only one time and can't stay connected to their families. Why is that? We got to raise the question. And so when we're figuring out why he didn't touch the Bible, but yet he dresses up on AI as a pope, and then he asks the Catholic people, can they take a joke? Some stuff ain't fun. And when we find out that we've become the prop instead of the focus, we've got to change our politics.
Well, I appreciate that, Reverend Yuri. I know that today there are going to be some very frustrated and some very angry people, and I can only imagine that the reaction is going to be visceral in the Black community to the decision by a Tennessee jury to acquit the second-degree alleged now murderers of Tyree Nichols. We all saw what we saw on video. It didn't lie to us. It did happen, but it was black on black. So therefore, the president is likely to take a position on the side of the blue, which means they could very well open up a can of whoop-tail on the Black community under this administration. Dr. Yuri, give us a word of hope.
Well, word of hope is starting with reality. The most dangerous person on the plantation was not the master, it was the overseer. And I'll give you a little insight as to what I said to my congregation on Sunday. They know I'm a little bit special, and so I tend to kind of say what I think.
Amen.
We are called to be disciples of Jesus Christ, if you follow the Christian faith. What I said to my congregation on Sunday, if you can't be Jesus, be Django.
No, Django. Work with us, Doc. We got about a minute and a half.
Listen, we'll unpack it another time. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it. But at the end of the day, Jesus calls us to a life of modeling. Django calls us to a life of accountability. And whenever there's no accountability, there has to be a response. Now, I ain't proposing to anybody that we should take on any hostility. But what I am going to say is the First Amendment applies to us too. The Second Amendment applies to us too. The Fourth Amendment applies to us too. The Fifth Amendment applies to us too. When we go through the Constitution, we are now people too. And in our people reality, we're going to make righteous demands that we will not back away from until the government treats us like the people we claim to be. We are who we are. We ain't taking it back. We don't want anything that we've not earned, but we're not going to let you sit here and play with us. We will ascribe to trying to model our lives after Jesus, but we also recognize that sometimes there's a Django spirit hovering close by.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This has been Wealthy Wednesdays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show with Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri. Until next time.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.